Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Sarika Sangekar and today we are discussing about the pollination and types of pollination. You know, pollination is occurring which categories of plant? Pollination is occurring main two categories of plant. Which two categories? The one category is the gymnosperm and second is the angiosperm. Means no other plant shows the phenomenon of pollination. First to discuss the pollination or the definition of pollination. Is the structure of flower or is the structure of bisexual flower or complete flower. When or the process of transfers of pollen grain, this is the structure of anther. Anther produce the pollen grain. Is transfers of pollen grain from anther to the stigma or the definition process of transfers of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of a same flower or of a different flower of a same species found on a same or different plant. This process is called as the self-pollination. Detailed study of pollination, we must know how many types of pollination are there. Main two types of pollination. The one type is the self-pollination and second type is the cross-pollination. But the self-pollination is again from the subtype. This is the first is the autogamy and second is the zettanogamy. But in the cross-pollination is only one subtype. This is called as the xenogamy. What's the difference between the self-pollination and cross-pollination? First, to discussing the difference between the self-pollination and cross-pollination. It's the first self-pollination. It's the structure of one complete or bisexual flower, or there is the self-pollination diagram. When pollination that occurs within the same flower means is the transferring the pollen grain from anther to the stigma within a same flower. This process is called as the self-pollination or condition is the self-pollination. But what's the cross-pollination? Pollination that occurs between the two different flower of a same species. To different plant to different flower. When the transfers of the pollen grain from the one flower of this the anther to the second flower of this the stigma, this condition is called as the cross-pollination or pollination that occurs between two different flower of a same species is the condition or it is called as the cross-pollination. First, in self-pollination, autogamy or a subtype first is the autogamy. What's the definition of autogamy? When or a process when pollen grain are transferred from anther to the stigma of a same flower. What's the definition? When pollen grain are transferred from anther to the stigma of a same flower. Such pollination are called as the autogamy. It is found in only the bisexual flower. You know the bisexual flower? Bisexual flower means both the reproductive structure or both the reproductive gametes found in the same flower. This condition is called as the bisexual flower. And the example is pea, wheat, groundnut is the example of autogamy. The second subtype is the zettanogamy. What's the zettanogamy? First to the definition of this, the zettanogamy. Transfers of pollen grain is the transfers of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of another flower on the same plant. This plant is the same plant. This is the same plant and this same plant to produce now that time transfers of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of another flower on a same plant. Such type of pollination called as the zettanogamy, or it is the type of pollination in which pollen grain of one flower are transferred to the stigma of another flower belonging to either the same plant or genetically similar plant. Genetically, it is equivalent to the self-pollination, but it is a functionally or ecologically cross-pollination. And example is all the monoecious plant. You know the monoecious plant? Monoecious means male and female reproductive part or male and female flower on the same plant This condition called as the monoecious, and the example is the maize, coconut, castor is the example of zygogamete. Second type is the cross-pollination. What's the definition of cross-pollination? First, to discuss the cross-pollination. When transfers of pollen grain from anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower in different plant of a same or different species, this condition or this process is called as the cross-pollination. Cross-pollination is performed with the help of an external agencies or depends on the external agencies. Cross-pollination is the transfers of pollen grain from the anther of one flower to the stigma of genetically different flower. And the example is the dioecious plant. What is the condition of dioecious plant or meaning of dioecious plant? Male flower are on the one plant and female flower are on the another plant. This condition is called as the dioecious plant. Means this is the imagine of this the one male flower or this is the one female flower. When transfers of pollen grain from one male flower to the transfer of another flower of stigma, this genetically different flower, this condition is called as the dioecious plant. And the example is the papaya and date palm is the example of cross pollination. Thank you for watching this video.